Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Robin Wilt, Brighton Board member and 2020 candidate for Congress, New York's 25th Congressional District. I want to thank you for joining us today for another COVID-19 community check-in and update. Now, these are updates where we highlight the issues facing our frontline and our most vulnerable community members in order to raise awareness and also build action around moving forward through this pandemic together with no one left behind. Today, we're going to focus on mutual aid in the age of COVID-19. In a historical sense, mutual assistance and self-help have been cornerstones of African American communities for generations. The earliest mutual assistance societies among African Americans were developed in the 1780s among free blacks and provided a form of health and life insurance for their members, care for the sick, burials for the dead, and support for widows and orphans. Now later, mutual aid societies sought to promote education and job training, especially for newly arrived African Americans, freemen, and fugitive slaves. So now we enter the era of COVID-19 and we're practicing mutual aid and physical distancing, but these are not new concepts for Black and racialized minorities in the Americas. Black people have always had to practice some form of physical distancing. While it seems strange to speak about distancing ourselves from others and coming together through mutual aid, these two concepts are in some ways profoundly related. We tend to move away from people who may harm us and tap into our groups who we know and trust for support. This is what everyday life looks like for African American diaspora in the Americas. Economist Jessica Gordon Nemhard, in her groundbreaking 2014 book, Collective Courage, cataloged Black people's expertise in collectives and cooperatives under very troubled times. It's long been overlooked that Black people were and are experts in economic cooperation, but Nemhard dispelled any myths about our capacity for cooperative economics by documenting that historically, African Americans in the diaspora would sequester to be safe and form isolated and sometimes secretive cooperatives within society to do the work in the community that needed to be done. And to that, to that point, today we're joined by Devon Reynolds, owner of Brothers and Sisters Unisex Salon and director of Sweet Ida Mae's Pantry, and Devin Anglin of Static Vibrations Network. Because I know you won't toot your own horn, Devin, I just want to recognize how much you're doing in the community and congratulate you on not only being named a 2019 40 Under 40 honoree, but also a 2020 Rock Awards Humanitarian of the Year and a 2021 Effie Award nominee. Thank you for joining us, Devin and Dev. We'll use that distinction just to keep us on track here. So first of all, I want to welcome you both and thank you for joining us in conversation today and give you both the opportunity to introduce yourselves in greater detail and tell us about your community involvement and your work in the community. Shall we start with Devin?
Okay. Peace, love, and hair grease family. I am a mild-mannered barber, owner of Brothers and Sisters Unisex Salon on Dewey Avenue. But we also practice conscious capitalism, and I have a food pantry, clothes pantry, and that's it. That's all.
Thank you so much. Like I said, very, very humble, down to earth. and you, Dev, please tell us something about yourself.
Okay. I'm Devin Anglin. I am the owner of Static Vibrations Network, which is Rochester's first studio specific to podcasting. But I've opened it up to media broadcasting. So the idea is for us to control our narrative and not let anyone else control our narrative for us. So I'm big in giving information and finding different ways to deliver information to our community. I'm also an educator. So a lot of my work naturally is in the community, uplifting our youth in our community and making sure that, you know, our youth leaders in our community are doing the things that's beneficial to our youth. And as we push forward through, these times like COVID and, our impoverished times as a community in the city of Rochester. So, me and Dev, we see eye to eye on a lot of things, and that's how we kind of, connected, because we see eye to eye on so many things. So, I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. I love that controlling our own narrative, because I think a lot of people, like with the history of cooperative economics that we discussed a little bit earlier, they overlook the fact that we are empowered in our communities.
Mm-hmm.
We have that power. Nobody has to give us that power. We are empowered to work cooperatively in our communities. And when we engage, nothing can stop us. So thank you so much for joining us. Now, I want to first start off again with you, Devin, about your why. What prompted you to begin Sweet Ida Mae's Pantry? And give us a little bit about the history of the pantry.
Okay, so what prompted me to start the Sweet Ida Mae Pantry was me doing my research about the Black Panther Project and their 10-point program, the way they helped the breakfast program for the kids, and had a meal program for the women and children. So as a barber, the demographics, the ones who come is usually single parent moms. And over the time, you get to build trust and communication with them, and they understand. They come to you and they vent to you, and you understand your role. Coming from a single parent home, I understood the problems that affects our households, and that financial pressure that's on the Black woman, specifically, coming from where I'm coming from. So it was really we started the Sweet Ida Pantry for single mothers, or single parent households.
Right. Oh, that's great.
During the COVID, so during the COVID, we ended up just opening our doors to everyone that was in need. But it's really just for single parent households, just to be able to give them that extra help. They can take that $50 and buy that food for the kids, or they can receive a meal from us and take that same 50 for that dinner and put it in the gas tank, or put it towards a bill, or something that's more, something that will help them out in the long term.
Yeah, I love that, because of course you mentioned the Black Panther Party, which was founded in Oakland in 1966, and they organized similar survival programs that included free breakfast and education programs for children, and even provide free shoes that they created in their own factory. There was clothing, there was food, there was healthcare, plumbing repair, pest control, you name it. And also transportation for the aged, but this type of help for those most in need in the community, and that focus on family unit, single moms, people who are struggling to meet the needs of their families every day. So I love that connection and modeling it.
Also, it was able to. Yeah, I'm sorry. It was able to be able to sustain a sense of self-reliance as well. Not having to reach out to the government to ask for help. You can come to somebody within your community and get that same assistance. Yeah. And it's a form, and that's another form of mutual aid.
Right. Self-reliance is inherent.
Self-reliance
in mutual aid.
It's mutual aid. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So, Deb, how about you? You talked about building relationship in the community, particularly among our youth, and that messaging being differently. Tell us a little bit about tell us about your story.
So to the point that was just made, and the idea of the Panthers and creating, sustainable, self-sufficient, survivable resources for our community, that all comes with providing a specific amount of information to the community, to the masses. So as I engaged with my youth, I tried to provide them with the information relevant to their, to their fight, to their struggle. And one of the things that I always kind of brag about, if you will, is when I got to 34 school, I put up a culture wall with a bunch of positive Black faces on it, because we don't see positive Black faces all too often, in our community. On the news, we see, we see a plaster of Black faces that are negative. They've done some type of crime and they look like me. So then this is how we kind of self-reflect on who we are. If we see Black faces as criminals, and when I look in the mirror, I see a Black face. So I'm big on information and providing information that will serve for the betterment of self. So how I do that is I mirror, positive images of, African people. And to that point, to the Panthers did the same thing. In that time, they were the positive faces of the Black people, of the African people, and they provided services that helped the Black people, the Black community, survive in the times of, outright overt police brutality, racism, and things of that nature. So for me, it's more so providing the information necessary to push us forward, no matter how old we are, because we all still process information. It's just a matter of how we deliver that information to that person. So if you're in kindergarten, you still processing the same information as a 50-year-old. It's just you have to speak it a certain way. So that's where I come in and bridging that gap of, just because they're young don't mean they can't understand this message. And then you also have to lead by example. So a lot of the times mutual aid societies, communities, they all lead by example. You know what I'm saying? So Ubuntu, I am because you are. So if you're going to be somewhere, if you're going to be something, then I have to lead in the way that I want you to be. So then we end up helping each other because it's that collective push towards a common goal.
Yeah,
That's the real definition of community.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but there are a couple of points I want to tease out there. You talk about controlling the narrative and doing that through making sure that there were positive role models, examples of our greatness around our youth. And I think that's so important. And then also mentoring, providing that positive role model for the youth. And I think that so much of what is taught in schools is not reflective of our true history. Starting with slavery in the Americas is not reflective of our history. It eliminates a lot of the greatness, a lot of the empowerment that exists within our community. And so just elevating those positive messages is so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
You hit on it earlier when you spoke about it, when you talked about our first mutual society. It was called the Free African Society.
Yes.
And this was in 1780s.
Yep.
In school, they told us that we was enslaved and we couldn't read.
Right. That's what they
that's what they told us. But in 1780, we had our first Free African Society that New York legislation passed. I mean, we are reading, we know the law. We are. You understand what I'm saying?
We are depending on one another.
This is not what they're telling us.
To build something, and that's.
I think we first need to start at the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
We need to the Dunmore's Proclamation, and understand why we got free people in America in the 1700s, early 1800s, and then you can actually piece together and figure out why we had runaway slaves. Where was they running to?
Right.
Other free Black communities. Now you can piece it together. You know, and we just have to. But with mutual aid societies, so now look in Tampa, the mutual aid societies down there, they form their own schools, hospitals, and cemeteries.
Yeah.
That's here in America, you know, and we can start taking um, control of our kids' education. So we have so many black churches in a black community. There's probably maybe 4 black churches every neighborhood in the black community. We should start turning them into learning centers as well. You
Absolutely.
know, and let's take control of our education so we don't have to rely on somebody else. You know, we're not complaining about somebody else teaching our kids, teaching the
But
history that they should
you,
know.
I'm sorry not to interrupt, but I just want to point out that that has been part of our history. The civic
Yep.
education through the church. There, that's why
Mm-hmm.
so many of our perceived leaders, people who
Yep.
have had movements within our community, have come up through the church because
To
they
church, right?
got that education, they got that civic
Yep.
education, and they relied
Mm-hmm.
on our trusted communities, you know, those relationships within the community in order
Mm-hmm.
to garner that education. And so, you know, it's so important that
Mm-hmm.
churches continue to serve that role because
Right.
that is historically the role of
Mm-hmm.
black
Mm-hmm.
churches within our
Yep.
community.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep. Yep.
so, so you started to talk about a little bit of how the pantry has changed since the pandemic. Now, not just focused on single moms, but more more members of the community benefiting from this mutual aid. Have there been other mutual aid projects that have sprung up because of the crisis?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of organizations do a lot of give backs now that the COVID and addressing the issue. We have the senior fairies now, people that's looking out for the high school kids that's graduating, and um, there's a lot of Facebook groups that's working and is out here taking care of everybody that they need to take care of. I've seen a lot of black entrepreneurs
Yeah.
and the black economics growing, the black support through social media is heavy. It's a heavy presence. So hopefully this rolls over to when the world back opens back up, we can understand the importance of utilizing each other, and we can push this thing forward and actually start using the plans that our ancestors put forward. It seems like we got away from organizations, and it's like we got charity and a benefit society confused.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You know, it only looks like charity when nobody else is helping.
Right,
You
right.
know, if
Yeah,
there's only one organization that's giving away and doing what they got to do, then it looks like charity. But when
right.
we have multiple organizations doing it, now we look like a mutual society. We like a
Ex-
benefit. We look like a community, and
Yep.
that's what people fail to realize.
yeah, it takes that cooperative effort. And
Yes.
I think that we've seen a lot of that. We've seen entrepreneurs, as you said, we've seen people helping out with needs during the crisis in terms of nutrition and clothing and whatnot. The Rochester What You Need, What You Got page, and then, you know, we've seen masks being, you know, sewn within the community and distributed within the
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
community, and not relying on
Right.
you know, the efforts that have largely and historically left us out. And
Mm-hmm,
so that mutual dependence, that cooperative spirit, we've definitely seen that come through. um,
mm-hmm.
so do we still, you know, and it's interesting because I read an article talking about, you know, basically the normative white culture and whether this increase in mutual aid that we would are seeing would carry through. But really, that this has always been a thread within our communities. This has been a necessary component of our communities, this
Mm-hmm.
reliance on mutual aid and cooperative spirit. So, um,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah. It's imperative for us to do it, but we haven't been utilizing it. It seems like this since the '70s, we faded away from it. Um, and it's the whole community has been divided, and it's just an individual mindset to it. They got to do it by themselves. They have to be the one to lead. You know, they
Yeah,
have to. It's this. It's and we don't understand that it's power in those words.
right.
In the
Well,
word individual lies itself is in divide you all. So
yeah,
if we don't come together, you know, we would
yeah,
never be, and it's just not processing in certain people, I guess.
yeah. It's feeding into that dominant, that often oppressive narrative,
Mm,
right?
mm-hmm,
You know, that we have to emulate what we see in the halls of
mm-hmm,
power today in order to be successful. Well, that's not true. We can actually reimagine these systems in order for them to be equitable and beneficial to our
mm-hmm,
communities. And
mm-hmm.
so,
Or
yeah,
we still can use them. We just have to utilize it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
We have to do it. We want to vote. We want to go out and vote, but we don't want to have an economic base first. Everybody else has power and resources. They have property and businesses and money. Then they go into the political realm. We want to jump straight into the political realm. Who's financing our black candidates? You
Right.
understand what I'm saying? For them when they get in front and when they get into office, that they're going to stand for us. Who are we supporting them the way we're supposed to be supporting them? And that's what other nationalities and communities are doing, and we're not understanding the principle behind it.
right.
But
Well,
we can utilize the same formats that they're doing, but we have to do it to a T. We have to keep our money within the community. We have to do what they do. We can't do some of the stuff they do and not all of it.
Right.
right, right.
You know,
But
I
I just
can't get
want
that
to
six
make
pack
sure
if I'm
that,
just gonna
that we're
eat right
saying,
and not work out.
yeah, I think it's important that we hold our elected officials accountable.
Yeah,
Uh,
we have to.
but I don't think there should be any deferring
Hmm.
being those elected officials. I think that we need to make sure that we are represented, we are at that table, um,
Right.
and just make sure that we are supporting those who support
Hmm.
us.
Yes.
So and
Yep.
the
And
priority
that's the
that
thing.
we need.
Yep.
Yeah. So so what has been the response in the community? You've been operating Sweet Item Ace Pantry for over 3 years now. So what is the response in general been, and then what has the response been from those who have received assistance within
Um.
pantry?
So those who have received assistance, they show their gratitude. Those from the outside who are helping. See, I'm not a non for profit,
Right.
unlike my critics. You understand? So everything that I get and everything that we receive at the pantry is literally from our community.
Yeah.
I'm not able to get grants. I'm not able to reach out to Walmart, Wegmans, and things in that nature and receive items from them. So it's literally auntie from up the street who's bringing canned foods and chicken, and it's people that hears and understands and has been in my shoes and been in these shoes of these people who's receiving these meals, who goes out their way. Like I said, Rob, I appreciate you so much, for what you have done over these last month, because the demand has been high on food and you've been a consistent donator, and it's literally communal
Mm-hmm.
support, and that's what it gives me hope and shows me that we can be more. There is critics. Some people think it's charity. Some people don't think look at it as a handout.
Mhm. But
Not understanding, not understanding the meaning of it, or
Yeah.
the struggle, the plight of it.
Yep.
You know how much me giving our community builds that. Now you are able to, maybe you want to listen to me before, but now that you know I will feed you for nothing, I'll take care of you. If I got it, you have it. Maybe you'll sit down and listen to me now. And when the time comes, we just gotta be. It gotta be that love, that unity, and that
Mm-hmm.
that open communication, that trust there
Yeah.
before we can move forward.
Right. We have to build the relationship because we are a relational community. That's how
Yes,
we
definitely.
build power within our community. And self-reliance requires that relationship building. And you say it's not just it's not from outside the community. This is not a handout. This is actually capitalizing on what is already within this community. It is self-reliance. It is the community contributing. The initial banks that were established through mutual aid societies, they would take $5 from 25,000 people, get $125,000, and that would be enough for the unit to move forward cooperatively. And that's the type of thing that we're modeling here. So it is not a handout. This is actually
at all. This is the blueprint. Yeah, this is the blueprint to where we're going to be, because we can utilize this same tactic that I got right now and open up a supermarket.
Yep.
And sell it for a cheaper price than the corner stores is. So we're not making a profit. We just covering overhead, but we are able to secure the food for our community. You know, like you said, the credit unions and the mutual saving banks literally started off of this. And everybody else is grasping the concept of it. I was just in Trinidad, and the smallest population there is Indonesians, but they're the richest. They hold the most wealth, the most power. They are the elite in Trinidad, and they have the smallest population there, but the most political control. You understand?
Right.
And it's all because of mutual aid societies. They work together. They brought their businesses together, and if we can capitalize on the concept and put our egos to the side and understand what's more important, then we'll be able to move forward. You know?
Yeah.
I agree. Power to the people. That's what
all about. All the power to the people. All the power to the people.
Now you are both small business owners. How are you handling this crisis? Have you had to seek assistance for your businesses? What have you been doing to sustain and even thrive during this crisis? What have been your means to that end?
Yeah, so I had to completely shut down. And it's been a struggle. It's been humbling times. I applied for everything I can apply for, but the stuff got shut down. So it's just like in the limbo. Thankful that my landlord is cooperative. And that's all I really can say. I'm glad I was taught to save for days like this.
Yep.
And that's all. I'm just getting by, and I really feel like it's because what I do for free is the reason why the universe is sustaining me right now.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
Absolutely.
But it also puts things in perspective that I need to be in control, because if my landlord wasn't receptive to what was going on here, and who knows what would be happening, where the shop would be at. I know a lot of businesses that had to close down already.
Yeah.
And so ownership is key. Ownership. I would be less stressed if I knew that this was my building and I couldn't go nowhere. You know what I'm saying? So ownership is key, and it showed me the importance of this pantry, because if you go to Walmart right now, it's not guaranteed to get milk. Right. But if you come to 1274 Dewey Avenue,
get some milk.
There you go. Now, you mentioned, applying for aid. There have been several federal relief packages now passed through Congress, and just Do you perceive that there are barriers within our communities to accessing that relief and stimulus that has been made available as a result of these federal relief packages?
Yes and no. Okay, I say yes because I think the hardest part is us finding out about these packages.
Yeah.
Um,
Information.
and the information and processing and going through the application. A lot of people, it's like we are intimidated by it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So if there was and this were a mutual aid, because if we had people that will just volunteer to walk business owners through it, I
Yeah,
think a lot of more people would jump to it and be more accepted. If they knew they could
absolutely.
get help to it, then have to. A lot of people don't have laptops and computers. I do all my stuff through my phone.
Right.
you know, so I can. It's just, it has barriers. We always have barriers. Since they began welfare since 1931, FDR.
Mhm.
And it's been barriers since then. They said only 3% of Black people was receiving benefits in the 1931.
Right.
It wasn't until 1967 when the ties changed and they had to fight for it
Yeah.
Yeah.
with the Economic Opportunity Group.
Right, right. Because these
Yeah, so
activities where our communities engage in, they were excluded from
yeah,
aid packages. And
yeah,
here,
yes,
we,
yep. With the New Deal, yeah, all of that.
yeah. So I think that's important to point out. And so this historical legacy of exclusion that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
continues to this day. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that how we access relief is not conducive to our communities necessarily
Mm-hmm.
being in on the process.
Yeah.
How, and we need more information disseminated within our communities. We need that educational component that goes hand in hand with mutual aid, the civic
Mm-hmm.
education. And that's why I love that Deb is here today as well, because you work in that realm, trying to disseminate
Yep.
that information, trying
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that we have that information to be empowered within our communities.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, yeah, I mean, it's really great to have you both here, just to emphasize the different components of mutual aid.
And to that
Um,
point,
Mm-hmm.
not to
yeah,
cut you off, I'm actually able to pay my rent for my studio, and by way of community aid. So the WAC, Women's of Color studio, they did a 24
yes,
hour creatives event, which raised money for a grant for creatives impacted by COVID. And I
yeah,
applied for that grant and I got some, money granted to me. And I'm
that,
actually going to use that for to pay, rent up on my studio to, stay alive and stay here in that
Mm-hmm.
process. So community aid, communal living systems are needed because if we want to sustain our messages and our stories and everything like that,
Mm-hmm.
then we have to maintain ourselves. One of my favorite communities that I've always studied was Black Wall Street, and
yeah,
how it took 11 investors with the same, mindset, the same collective vision to create one of the greatest striving Black communities based off of mutual aid and communal living, to where if your house burned down, the community built it up, moved you into another house, built your house from the ground up and moved you back into your house. So that's like some of the epitome of, what we're talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
because of mutual aid, I'm able to pay my rent up without having to dip into my savings funds, while my podcasters are not podcasting because of COVID. So I don't have that flow of, income coming in. So
yeah.
yeah.
And I'm so glad that you highlighted the Woke Art Collaborative.
Yeah.
In full disclosure, I am a member, and that concert series was amazing. That
Mm-hmm.
was the concert series that extended over the course of
And
days. and there were opportunities to contribute, and with the goal, with the intended goal to create a pool of money to have these scholarships available, these uh, to different
Yep.
artists, so that they continue to thrive during the crisis. So thank you so much for bringing that up.
No problem.
And
Yeah.
just a shameless plug.
Yeah.
I'm hosting a practice what you pitch competition, and we're giving away a business grant to somebody who can whoever wins the competition, $2,500 to your business to help develop it and get it off its feet. I was able to open up my shop 5 years ago with $2,200.
Wow. Right.
5 years
Well,
later,
yeah,
and I'm still here. So
still here. And so we do like to leave uh, action items for people who are watching. So if somebody wants to get involved, if somebody wants to help with any of these different collaboratives, how can they get involved? How, for instance, can they get involved in this business pitch?
all right, so I will drop the link on my page.
Perfect.
I'll put the link on your page. I'll send
Yep.
you the link. If, all you got to do is fill out the application. We having a class to teach you how to do a business plan, how to put it together, and how to pitch it, so you won't be walking into there blind.
Right.
Then we have the competition, and I pray that you're able to be able to fill a void in the community, practice conscious capitalism, and help us thrive. For those, another action item for those is link up. We have to use group economics.
Right.
We have to use group economics, and if we're not going to acquire resources, and if we're not going to put our resources to influence the political realm, we have to use a voter block.
Yes. Yeah. Good point. Good
We have to
point.
use a
So
voter block. We have to start using our power that we have. We have to, we split our
yeah.
vote so many times. I see in so many elections, it'd be three black people running from the Democratic Party. You know, running against each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
Other than us
Right.
just choosing one and saying this is who we're going to support, this is who we're going to back. And if we just have to uh,
Right.
start practicing what we preach,
Yep.
basically. If
Right.
we're talking about this community building, if we're known for this, then we have to start coming together. There's too many schisms in the black community. It's too much ego, and we're not putting our kids first.
Yeah. We have to
And when
vote
we're not
our
thinking about
interests.
the future, we're looking for instant gratification,
Yeah.
and we
Yep.
we have to put that to the side.
Right.
It
We
can't be
have
about money.
to. Yeah.
Don't just be in the streets when you get a paycheck for it. You have to, even if you get fired from it, you got to be there. even
Right.
even if even if even if that's just not there, you create your own version of it.
Yeah.
Utilize we have to utilize what we see, and we just have to do what we and we have to stop black businesses. We got to stop imitating each other. We got to stop opening up the same business. We have to diversify. I know we've seen it through this COVID. We got a lot of barbershops and hairstylists and hairstyling, but we don't have a lot of everything else.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
No,
real
no,
scarce what we could go through. What we could do is get food and outfits from each other, you know.
yeah.
And we
Yeah.
got to diversify. We got to diversify our portfolio in the community.
Yeah. Fannie Lou Hamer was
So that's
our,
only thing I can say.
yeah, and connecting with local merchants, so you could get food that was farmed within a cooperative delivered directly to the food deserts within some of our communities, and that type of things that we have
Right.
to build. We have to build those relationships
Mm-hmm.
and networks and diversify. You're absolutely correct, and you make a good
Mm-hmm.
point
And
about voting as a block and making sure that we are supporting the candidates that
mm-hmm.
support our best interests and becoming informed about who those candidates are. So thank you so much for mentioning that.
Right.
I'm going to put
my question would be, Robin. My question would be now. Okay, so we do the voter block.
Mhm.
As a politician, well, not a politician, but a person that's into politics. You know what I'm saying? Because politicians seem like it has a bad, that's a politics. But as somebody that's in politics, how would you say, or how would you go about if we put somebody in office and they don't do as they say they're going to do for us, or don't have our best interests when they get into office? How would you go about it to get them out, or what would you say will harm them the most during the next,
well,
how would you retaliate against that, I guess?
I think we have to be vigilant, and
Yeah.
that's how we hold people accountable. When
Mm-hmm.
people go around and talk about a platform and say that they want to implement this policy and that policy and the other policy, we never go back and say, hey, what have you done what you said you were going to do? And I think that we don't look back at those voting records and make sure that people are voting our best interests. And there has been this lack of accountability. I hate to say it, but a lot of politicians will show up at a barbecue, they'll show up at your birthday party, but then they'll vote against your interests when they're in the chamber. And we need to make sure that when our elected officials are doing that, we hold them accountable and we vote them out, regardless whether they've been at the barbecue. so that's the measure of accountability.
Is that public information?
Yes, voting records are public information. That is one of the blind spots that we have when we act relationally. We think that just because people are showing up at our community events, that they are doing the work for us in the halls of power. And that's not necessarily true. We need to make sure that, we are talking about our issues, regardless whether they're at the barbecue or in the halls of power. We need to be in both spaces. We need to make sure that we're holding people's feet to the fire.
I'm sorry, you cut out. You cut out on my end.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying that we need to make sure that.
Yep.
Yeah. Can you hear me? That we don't allow those relationships to supersede.
Yep, I can hear you. Yep, you're clear now.
Yeah, we can't allow those relationships to supersede the accountability piece. Just because you show up at the barbecue, that does nothing for me. I want you to show up in that vote. I want you to show up with that piece of legislation. So don't let it end at the relationship level where you're coming to the barbecue. Make sure that they are voting your interests in the halls of power
continuously.
And if they're not, then you need to assume responsibility for getting them out and ensuring that somebody who does have our best interests gets into those seats. So
absolutely.
So I'm going to put links to Woke Art Collaborative, Sweet Item Ace Pantry. What else are we missing? The
Static Vibrations.
Yes, there we go. The Static Vibrations Network link. So make sure that if you're watching us, you support these endeavors, because these are true mutual aid cooperatives that are operating within our communities. And again, we have the power. We just need to make sure that we're exercising it.
Absolutely.
So,
right.
thank you so much for being my guest here today. This has been an active discussion, and it's got to continue. It's got to continue. So I love to get together with you, Dev,
please,
over Static Vibrations, and let's talk policy. Let's talk about what what I would like to do when I go to Congress.
Sounds
So
like a plan. We can set that up,
yeah,
to see what times work for all of us.
great, great. I look forward to the discussion. And again, thank you for joining us today. This has been really a pleasure to have you both. You guys are both so community oriented and so active in empowering our communities. It was really a great discussion. So thank you. I look forward to our next talk.
All right. Appreciate it.
All
Peace,
right.
peace.
Peace. Everybody stay safe.